Hello everyone and welcome to a game that is a complete roller coaster. It's from day 2 of the noon chess classic, Magnus Carlsen versus Hikaru Nakamura. As you know, yesterday Magnus won the match. He won 2 games, Hikaru won none, 2 games were drawn, and now Hikaru has to bounce back. He has to win the match by at least a 2-point margin to force tie breaks and to maybe win this finals. But this game, it's already, I think this is definitely the craziest game of all the games in the finals so far. So let's check it out. Hikaru with the white pieces, and it's it's like I said, a real roller coaster. I'm gonna ask you to pause the videos at least 3 times, maybe more. So if you're not ready for that, get ready for that. So without further ado, let's check it out, and let's switch from the 4K camera to a normal view. And Hikaru with the white pieces opens with d4. Sorry about that. Fix that. We have knight to f6 by Magnus, c4, we have e6, knight to c3, and now Magnus goes for the Nimzo-Indian defense. We have bishop to b4, queen to c2, going for the classical variation, and now striking in the center with d5, going for the Noah variation, c captures, e captures, and now bishop to g5. So all very standard stuff here. We have h6, bishop to h4, and now again striking in the center with c5. We have d captures on c5, and now a normal way to continue this, or rather not a normal way, but the most usual way, is g5, bishop g3, and knight e4, now putting more pressure on the c3 knight. But here for this game, Magnus goes bishop to e6, and it's not a new move, but it is a very rare one. We have e3, preparing to develop the light square bishop, castles by black, and now knight to f3. We have knight b to d7, and now comes knight to d4. A bit more usual is bishop to e2. It's kind of a more principled idea, not playing with the same piece twice in the opening, but Hikaru knows what he's doing. We have knight to d4, now going after this bishop on e6, and Magnus goes bishop captures on c5 here. He had to decide whether to capture with the knight or with the bishop, and he spent some 4 minutes on this idea, which is a lot, as these are 15-minute games. So he played bishop captures on c5, not worrying about knight captures on e6, and Hikaru just went bishop to d3 instantly, saying, I prepared for this, I'm more than ready. So Magnus eliminates the knight in the center, gives up the bishop pair. We have e captures, and now queen to b6, putting pressure on the d4 pawn, but Hikaru just plays queen to d2, indirectly defending the pawn. And I know none of you were actually considering grabbing this, because if you grab it, bishop h7 check wins the queen. So of course he didn't go for that. We have knight to e4 now, attacking Hikaru's queen, and now bishop captures on e4. We have d captures, and now d5, grabbing more space in the center. Now after the bishop moves, we're gonna go after this pawn. So bishop f5, defending the pawn, not allowing the capture, and only now Hikaru castles. We have queen to g6, shifting the queen over to the king's side, and now you do have some ideas here. Maybe the bishop can threaten checkmate, maybe you can bring your knight into the game somehow to threaten some other ideas. But all in all, if white is able to survive that, it's white who has a passed d pawn, and that pawn is very, very close to queening. So here Hikaru pushes it to d6, and now comes knight to e5. The premature bishop h3 doesn't really do anything. You just block with bishop to g3, and now this bishop is just, doing nothing here, so you'd have to bring it back. So Magnus brings the knight into the game, and this is now a very nice move, and now already threatening knight to f3 check, which would win white's queen. The g pawn is pinned, so bishop to g3, this is strongest. Hikaru takes care of everything, and now rook f to e8. And already here Hikaru is still above the 15-minute mark, which is a lot since you started with 15 minutes, and Magnus is already down to 6 minutes, maybe 6.5 minutes. So here Hikaru has a lot of options here. He can bring the rooks into the game, rook c1, rook d1, the other rook can come into the game. You can centralize the queen, maybe put additional pressure to the knight, but he goes for knight to b5. Again, a very nice idea, threatening knight to c7 to win one of the rooks. So Magnus goes rook a to d8, and now comes queen to c3 with a double attack on this, sorry about the arrows, with a double attack on the knight on e5. And now, while Magnus could go, forward with knight to d3, he decides to go back and keep everything safe. So knight to c6, as you all know, strongest move is always with the knight back most of the time, so why not? Knight to c7 by Hikaru attacking the rook here, and now rook to f8. You don't really have any other squares for this rook, so rook to f8 is a must, and now rook 8 to d1. You could also play rook 8 to c1, but Hikaru has an idea of what he wants to do with the other rook. So rook 8 to d1, and now h5, which makes sense because well, you want to push this pawn all the way at some point, but for the moment the h4 square is defended by this bishop, so it's not really an issue. Although you could play h4 and eliminate all of black's counterplay on the queen side forever, Hikaru says nope, there's no need to rush that. He goes queen to c5, and now he already has some plans of maybe rook d5, put pressure on the bishop. If the bishop moves, there's pressure on the h-pawn. So what do you do here? First, rook to d7. You do not want to allow this pawn to be pushed, so rook to d7, blocking this, and now b4. Now Hikaru wants to dislodge the knight from c6, and Magnus prevents this. We have a6 and now a4. Again, you could have some other moves. The rook can come to d5, like we said. The knight can come to d5. Then later on, you can play knight e7 check. Could be very strong, but Hikaru not in a rush. He starts, just pushing those queenside pawns. And now comes a move that was, well, sort of characterized in the live coverage as clear desperation from Magnus Carlsen, and he pushes e3 here because it's not easy to find a move. There really are no great moves here, so he plays e3. It's a positional pawn sacrifice. It frees the e4 square for the bishop, and then maybe you can do some threats with h4. So makes sense in a position like this to make such a move, but we'll see what happens. So if you capture with the queen, then you give up the b4 pawn. So Hikaru just captures with the pawn. He says, nope, this is not a problem. And now bishop to e4. Now h4 is the threat because if the bishop moves, queen g2 will be checkmate. And situation on the clock is 8 minutes for Hikaru and 4 minutes for Magnus. So here we have rook to d2, just defending that pawn. Here Hikaru had a bit of a, maybe a more active move, but it's crazy to look for such things in a rapid game. I'm just going to show it because it's super fun. Knight to d5, and now the point is, if h4, if the bishop moves, now you're going to get checkmated. Now the problem is knight e7 check, forking the king and the queen. So you have to capture the knight. Now pawn captures, threatening to capture this guy with check. Now rook e8, and now rook captures on d7. And finally, after h captures on g3, now we're going to play h4, and you have this position where white is of course winning, but it's an ugly position to analyze, from the set position. So after bishop to e4, we have rook to d2. Hikaru keeps it safe. He can really go all out. He is very much behind in the match. So here Magnus goes king to h7, and it's a move you don't really want to make, but it's hard to find a better one. A better one might be something like b6, a pawn sacrifice to maybe start activating your pieces, queen captures and rook b8. That's one idea, but okay, Magnus went for king to h7, and now again Hikaru could go something like knight to d5. Like we said, this is always an idea, but he first starts with b5. It makes sense. Let's dislodge this knight, and then we're gonna go for such ideas. So we have captures, knight to d8, and only now knight to d5. So what can Magnus do here? He starts by activating the knight. The king is no longer on g8, so you don't really have to worry about knight e7 check, but knight e7 is an ugly move when it comes, whenever it comes. And Hikaru goes for queen to c4. Now there's pressure on this bishop here, and you always have to keep an eye. Ideas like, not now as this knight is on e6, but ideas like rook to d4, rook to f4 could really put a lot of pressure along the fourth rank. So here we have h4 by Magnus, now really going all out here. And now Hikaru has one very, very excellent move. So this is only the first pause the video moment, so feel free to pause the video and try to find the winning idea for Hikaru while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting this, well, a move with the knight forward. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's knight to e7. And this is extremely powerful here. Now, the problem is the queen is under attack. You have to move the queen. You don't really have the option of capturing here. So queen to g4 by Magnus. And now comes bishop to e5 by Hikaru. And now you'll see that black is really in a lot of trouble. A more straightforward way was bishop to f4 because it immediately comes with a threat, and after bishop to g6 we have this h3 idea. Now the queen has to move, and after the queen moves, now for example rook d5, we further harass the queen, and if something like f5 then e4, and you know, black's position is simply unbearable. But okay, like I said, this is a rapid game. Bishop to e5 was played by Hikaru, and now comes knight to g5. So again, very tricky position, Magnus with a lot of threats here, and it's not easy to find a move for Hikaru here. Magnus is down to 1 minute on the clock, Hikaru almost 3 minutes on the clock here, and Hikaru has to find rook to f4. If Hikaru finds rook to f4, then it's just game over, Magnus. You don't really gain anything by knight to h3 check, just king h1, and after knight captures on f4, we're just gonna play queen to captures on e4 with check, and now we win material. If f5, we're just gonna capture here, and now white has just too much material. For example, captures, and this is now completely winning for Hikaru. However, this is chess, and in chess great things always happen. Hikaru did not play rook to f4, rather he played bishop to f4, and now it's actually Magnus who's completely winning. And now I think this is the nicest move of the entire game, so feel free to pause the video and find this brilliant winning idea for Magnus while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on not doing, again, anything weird. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's rook captures on d6. And now look at white's position. All of a sudden, white doesn't really have any threats, and you know, his pieces are hanging. What about the rook here on d1? That rook is defending this. If this rook moves, then we're just gonna get checkmate. For example, if captures, then this is checkmate. And even if you don't capture this, there's really no good move here. For example, if bishop captures, this is even worse. Well, not even worse, as that one ends in checkmate, but here you lose the queen. The queen on c4 is undefended, and now we just play knight h3 check. There's no move here. You can't go to f2. King h1 is the only move, and now the king is on a light square, and that's exactly where we want him. Bishop captures with check, rook captures, and now we pick up the queen. Queen captures on c4, and now black is completely winning. But again, this is chess, and Magnus did not find rook captures on d6. He was under a minute, and of course, I mean, who finds such a move? He played knight to h3 check right away. We have king to h1, and now he strikes with f5. This is the correct way to play. Now everything seems to be in order, and the both of them are now under a minute. So this is now bullet chess, and the position is just amazing. So here Hikaru immediately dives in with queen to e6. This is best, attacking the undefended rook on d7, and Magnus goes for knight captures on f4. Now with a triple attack here on the g2 pawn, Hikaru eliminates it with the rook, attacking the queen, and now Magnus tries sacrificing the queen. He plays rook to a8, saying, all right, if you capture my queen, then I'm just going to deliver rook to a1 check, and you only have one move. Rook d1, rook captures will be checkmate. Hikaru, of course, not interested in that. He finds a very nice defensive idea, king to g1. Although there was a nicer one, queen e5 guards the a1 square, and you know, white keeps all of his ideas alive. Not much for Magnus to do here, but okay, king to g1 was played, and now comes rook to a1 check. Rook to f1, at least Magnus eliminates one of the attackers, rook captures, king captures, and now rook to d8. As the rook was still hanging, we have h3 chasing back Carlsen's queen, queen to g5, and now d7. And now this pawn is just a monster here, and Magnus will have a terrible time defending against this. So you don't really have an option. This queen and knight are guarding all of these squares. I mean, there's really nowhere for you to move. The rook can never move. You just, sorry about that. You just promote this pawn to a queen. That's game over. And what can Magnus do? Magnus can hope that Hikaru blunders. So Magnus plays queen captures on e3, attacks the rook now here, but he leaves the g6 square undefended. So queen to g6 check was played, king to h8, and now queen to e8 is a possibility, of course, but Hikaru plays the more precise line. Queen h5 check, Now king to g8 of course is impossible because the knight covers this, and now queen to h6. Now comes queen e8 check, and now of course the queen cannot be captured. If the queen is captured, then we just bring queen into the game, and after the king moves, this is just checkmate. So after queen to e8 check, king h7, and now comes queen captures on d8. That's the idea. And now the rook of course cannot be captured. If the rook is captured, it's just well, it's actually a forced checkmate in 10, but that doesn't really matter because black just loses the queen very quickly. King h6, we're going to deliver this check, then king g5, then we're gonna capture this guy here, and after queen f4, queen h6 check, we'll pick up the queen on d2, and very quickly we'll checkmate the black king. So instead, after queen captures on d8, Magnus tries one last idea, bishop captures on g2, and it's a very good idea because if Hikaru captures, then we capture the rook with check, and now you're not going to be able to, survive all of the checks. For example, queen d3, king f4, queen g3 check, king captures, queen f2 check, and now you will be able to check the white king to infinity, hopefully. So Hikaru, of course, not interested in that. After this check, Hikaru plays king to e2. Now Magnus tries it one more time. He plays bishop to f1 check. And now, even though this one can be captured because this does not come with check, Hikaru just plays the calm king to d1. And it was in this position on move 49 that Magnus Carlsen resigned the game. And game 1 of the second match of the New Chess Classic goes to Hikaru, who is one step closer to tying the match and forcing tiebreak. So already we're up to an incredible start, and we'll see if Hikaru can take it all the way. So really an impressive game. I mean, this is if we really wanted to analyze all of the things that happened here, we'd need like an hour-long video. But I hope I at least tried to. I mean, I have tried. I don't know if I was successful in showing what a crazy game this was. So, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I would like to thank Colin Lancaster, Dustin Lackey, Rob Toy, Tom Derilau, and Ricardo Rolfs for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the New Chess Classic, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and whatever else happens in the chess world. So, thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.